Hey everyone, in this video we're talking about the kind of simplifying exponent question that you can expect to see on your final exam. So it's got, quite a few different parts. We're going to be using some different exponent rules that we've talked about. And I think the biggest thing is when you see a question like this, we've got 25 times the cubed root of x to the fifth. Notice that the 5 is underneath the cube root sign. That would be different than if the fifth was out here, outside the cubed root sign. Got that over 5x to the power of 1 over 3, and all of that is squared. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming to look at a question like that, but if you just take it sort of in little baby steps, do one small thing at a time, it's not really too bad. You'll see what I mean as we go along. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I noticed that this x to the exponent, is written in the form like x to the n, some variable to an exponent. This one, while it's the same variable, isn't written in the same form. So I'm going to change that into the x to the n form. I can never remember, is it when you make into a fraction, is it the 3 that goes on top or does it go on the bottom? I can never remember. But what I can remember is that anything to the power of a half is equivalent to a square root. If we look at the square root, the exponent on x must be 1. And in all square roots, there's a little imaginary 2 outside of the square root sign. So what that means is, it's the number on the bottom that tells you whether it's a square root, a cubed root, a fifth root, and it's the number on top that stays with the variable when you put it under the root sign. So the cubed root of x to the fifth, I'm going to simplify that as x to the exponent of what's underneath stays on top, 5 over what's outside stays on the bottom. So this would be x to the power of 5 over 3. That's the only thing I'm going to change for the first step. Everything else is going to leave alone. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is distribute this 2. And this 2 applies to the variable, and it also applies to any whole number or any fraction. It also applies to the variable in the denominator and the number in the denominator. So I'm just going to rewrite this as 25 squared times x to the power of 5 over 3 squared. And I just put some brackets in so that that exponent and that fractional exponent doesn't get mixed up at all. I've got 5 squared times x to the power of 1 over 3, and that's also squared. So now I'm going to go over here. 25 squared, you can do that in your calculator. It would be 25 times 25 is 625. X to the 5 over 3 squared. This is the product rule of, sorry, not the product rule, the power rule of exponents. And it says when you have something to an exponent, you multiply the exponents. To multiply exponents, any whole number, just put it over 1. You multiply the tops together. 5 times 2 would be 10. And multiply the bottoms together. 3 times 1 would be 3. So x to the 5 over 3 squared is really x to the power of 10 over 3. Over on the bottom, 5 squared is 25. And power rule again, x to the 1 over 3 squared. Squared is the same as 2 over 1. 1 times 2 on the top will be 2. And 3 times 1 on the bottom will be 3. Now I think what I'll do is simplify the numbers. 625 divided by 25 is equal to 25. 25 divided by 25 is equal to 1. And then the division or quotient rule of exponents says that when you have the same variable to an exponent on the top and bottom of a fraction, all you do is put it on top and subtract the exponents. So I'll go 10, doesn't look like a 10, 10 over 3 minus 2 over 3. When you subtract anything with any fraction, you need to have a common denominator. 3 and 3 are the same number, so I've got one of those. So that's good. So this will become 25. I'll drop the over 1 because anything divided by 1 is just the same thing you started with. X to the power of 10 over 3 minus 2 over 3. The denominator doesn't change, and on top I'll have 10 minus 2, which would be 8. So this big mess up here actually just simplified down to 25, x to the power of 8 over 3, and that will be your final answer.